brethren so will be coming in. By now you should have had an opportunity to read in your booklets Parrott's biographical sketch. He has prepared himself not only for this presentation, he's been in ministry for a number of years, well qualified, help us again this year. As I said, this will be a sequel from last year. Don't count it as an off, don't count it as not necessary, simply because you never know where life or ministry may lead you. Perhaps you can hear something thing that you can share, not with your church, with another sister church or situation. Amen? Amen. Join me in giving a warm expression of love and welcome to Dr. Kevin.
Once again, to moderator Dr. Evans and to you pastors of the West Coast Baptist Association, thank you all so much for this opportunity to share my heart and share my passion with you today. I share this burden with you as pastors, something I never desired to be nor to become, because I've worked with pastors for many, many years, and I see exactly what they go through and what they have to contend and deal with. So my prayers are always with you as pastors. And so this evening we want to have dialogue and conversation about our music and arts ministry, which is so important in our churches. And since I'm among my own kind, important in our black churches, because we thrive off of good preaching and good music. But I also understand that if we do not have the right person, if we don't have the right people in leadership in our music and arts ministry, the music ministry either can make your service or it can break your service.
All right.
And so it's very important that there is a close connection and correlation between whether you have someone full-time or if you just have what we call back up south piano players. Doesn't matter what you call them, if you are compensating them, if you are paying them to handle the music aspect of your church, it is important that you have that relationship with that musician or that music director. Now, I don't know of you that were in our session last year when we were in Orlando. Is this your first time in our session? So, first time. All right. So, first time. Well, very good and welcome to this first time session. So, I want to kind of digress a little bit back to those that were with us last year and just ask the general question: how are we doing?
Yeah.
How are we doing in our churches? Are we satisfied? Don't fail that test. That was a trick question. You should never come to the point where I'm good, I'm satisfied. Because what you did yesterday still looks big to you, you're out of date. Okay. You're out of date. And there's a lot of things that we can talk about, but I want to kind of keep it relevant to where you are and how we get to the next point. As myself, first of all, been in the church music ministry 42 years now. And I know I don't look that old, but I started very young. I was 8 years old when I got my first paid job. I was a musician for the junior choir for $5 a week. Amen. So that constituted a job. So I've been through the ranks and I've seen the ups and downs of church music. And it surprises me sometimes when we become satisfied and we don't place those demands and those expectations on our music leadership. Because remember, that music ministry either can make your service or break that service. Now, I know there are some preachers and pastors that don't like to hear this comment, but you can have a church that where the pastor is not too well stood, is not too well in his preaching presentation, and have a good, strong choir, you can have a church. But you can have a pastor that is strong, well standing, stood in the pulpit and delivered well. But if that music ministry doesn't support the level and the competency of the preaching, it can cause for some problems. So that shows you the power of the music ministry in our church. And we're beginning to take it light. Well, as long as they show up, as long as the choir at least sing one part, then I'm all right. And we don't put those expectations on the people. And I'm speaking in reference to the ones we pay, not volunteers. Because with volunteers, you kind of have to get what you can get when they can give it to you. But now when a person is being paid and when a person is being compensated, it is very important, pastors, that we have those expectations and then inspect what you expect. You never just leave a musician or director just to go to themselves. That's your area, you do it, you go for it. You never give music people that kind of rank. And I'm speaking from good experience. Because being an artist myself and being a creative person, because those us music people sometimes can become challenging to deal with. Sometimes we get a little fickle on it. So you have to be real careful when you're working with the art people and those in the music ministry. But pastors, I want to go back and just talk about at the very beginning of our church structure. And so 3 areas that I want to talk about for this time that we should share is the ministry, the message, the music. Now, if you notice, music came last. Although our topic today is the music ministry and its relationship, but the music is last. The music is important, but it's not as important as the ministry or the message. They've got to be able to come together. Because if there is not a good stand in ministry, and if there's not a good stand in the message, we don't have any music anyway. And so remember, once again, we just don't want to leave our musicians just to go off and just to do your thing. There needs to be ramification. First, the ministry. When I talk about the ministry, the church. And the big C word that I've been using here lately is called the word culture. Culture. All of our churches, every pastor in this room has a different culture within their church. And we have to understand that culture. As I'm speaking to your musicians and as you're talking to your music leaders, remind them to respect the culture. Because they're coming from out of areas and different situations where they've seen it to the greatest of magnitude to the smallest. And so we always want to come back and start turning and changing it, And you can't, and all of us are Baptists in here, so I'm going to make this real specific to us Baptist people. We don't like it when you come in here and try to start flipping and turning things. And you don't even know our address real good. And so I try to teach you, be careful when you go in. Well, we're going to start this and we're going to start doing that. No. Find out where you are first. Learn the people. Learn the culture, because culture is everything. Culture is what's driving your church. And so we've got to be careful of who we bring in. Yeah. We've got to be careful. I don't care what their credentials are. I don't care how they did it, whatever. Because you will do yourself more harm bringing in the wrong person. Because what it took you 5 and 10 and 15 years to build, you get the wrong person in there and they can tear it up in one day. And I'm the same way when I'm bringing on musicians and when I'm hiring musicians, that I'm very careful. And some have come before me with tremendous skills. Oh my gosh, they don't play for every major artist, and I mean, but that connection. Because there's got to be a connection. And even if they are not members of your church, and you're bringing someone in that are not members, you have to be very careful.
research. So when we talk about the ministry, do you consider, and all of this is open dialogue, Pastor, do we consider our churches and our ministries as Dollar Trees or Walmart? Now, I'm not going against our culture. Still keep that word culture. But when we look at our ministry, are we Dollar Trees or are we Walmarts? I like both of them because I can gain something from both of them. Stuff that that I need right quick. Don't expect it to last too long. I can run the Dollar Tree. I'm always doing things for our children's choir at the church. Sometimes I'm sitting off during the day and I go, let me go get some coloring books or whatever, just surprise or whatever. I run the Dollar Tree for that. Everything is $1. Don't expect it to last long. It's cheap. Okay? And so I can just run the no problem. And then, I can run the Walmart. Pay a little bit more, might last a little bit longer. But there's a difference between the Dollar Tree church and the Walmart church. And so when I talk about the Dollar Tree church, are we just those that we just want to do Sunday, we'll be all right. As long as we meet our financial expectation from the offering, we'll be all right. What is it that we are expecting out of our church? So when we look at our denomination versus diversities, denomination versus diversity, that's the big word now. We're finding the Presbyterian churches and we're finding the Catholic, everybody's doing diverse service. They're having a traditional service and they're having a contemporary service. Trying to meet the masses, meet everyone where they are. Diversity is not a bad thing, but there are dangers to diversity, especially when the culture doesn't dictate it. Remember, you got to learn where you are. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself so that I know I ain't offended nobody. Nobody got to go back and tell nothing that I see. So I'm talking about myself and my own situation. And when we talk about that diversity and these cultures, I accepted the Minister of Music position there at Mount Zion in St. Petersburg in 2009. And Mount Zion is a traditional black, Baptist church. They still have the deacons that line the hymns, and they still do their formality. And I'm coming in from, D.C., Maryland area where it's high church. It's just high church. Yeah. We have pipe organs in every black church just about it. So it's just high church. I mean, every Sunday morning is a hymn, and we modulating on those hymns. And the church get happy just off the hymns alone. And so, I come here and I'm expecting that same thing. Well, have to learn the culture first. So we're not gonna stop the deacons from lining, but we're gonna come up with another alternative. We're gonna come up with a praise team. But the culture didn't dictate a praise team. I tried 3 times, and it was not successful. Why was it not successful? Because the culture did not dictate. We've got to be careful what we're pushing in on the people without having taught them along the way. Because my opposition came, first of all, when I had those 69 singers on the pulpit. Oh, that's a problem right there. First of all. You have it in the pulpit. And I thank God, and that's why I never look at my challenges and my opposition as a curse. I really appreciate those that respect me enough to come, and especially the older mothers and seasoned ones at the church, were the ones that came to me, very nice and respectful. First of all, wanted to know what was I doing. What are you doing? Why are those people up there on the pulpit? Why are they I see knees, and they give it to me from the attire all the way to their hair, and and so I had to try to explain we don't need that. We don't need that. deacons do a good job lining in. We don't need nobody coming along singing another song after them. So what happened, I'm gonna still kind of, move forward a little bit. Maybe they'll adapt and try it again. And they come back again and say, now, y'all gonna keep standing up there? Can y'all at least go stand in the choir loft somewhere? So what had eventually happened for peace sake, I ceased it. Because I would have done myself more harm to keep trying to shove it down their throats when the culture didn't dictate.
That's right.
And so a lot of times we want to turn and we want to catch up and we want to be to the up now. And I know back in the 80s and the 90s, it kind of died down in the 2000s, but really in the 80s and 90s there was this big thing with church growth conferences, 5-star church conferences. Grow your church, grow your church, grow your church. And at that time, when I was in North Carolina, pastor required that we going to the church, go to church. And of course they had good material and good things to say. But what they failed to realize and to share with us is the culture. And then I come to find out that there was really only one sure foundation of church growth, and that's John 12:32. Jesus said, and if I be lifted up, will draw all men unto me. Now I ask the question, are our services drawing them to Jesus? We have to survey our church services and decide, does this service matters? What difference is this service going to make in the lives of the parishioners? Or are we just coming and fulfilling our Sunday obligations? So we as pastors and music leaders have to really sit down, because I'm telling you, we're in a whole different generation of churchgoers. It's not like it used to be. Older people will come to church, they'll come to Sunday morning, they'll come to Sunday school, they'll come to BTU, they'll come to evening service, they'll come to missionary service. But this generation ain't doing all that. They're doing good if they come to your one service, and you got the dash to have two services. So we have to make sure that I say the same thing to our choir directors and to our musicians. We have to make sure that each service counts and it matters. Because with this generation of churchgoers, they're no longer interested in what you're saying. They want to see something. I want to see these signs and wonders. I want to see lives change. I want to see miracles. I want to see. That's the generation. It's the show me generation. And so we as pastors and music leaders have to first of all make sure that we stay true to the book. Stay true to the text. To make sure that the people are in the text and the texts are in the people. That things are now relevant. That has been my big word for 2014 and probably going to use it for 2015, and that's relevancy. I want to be relevant. I don't need to keep up with the latest. I don't need to keep up with the greatest, but I need to be relevant, which means I need to be in touch with what's going on musically and church-wide. I started noticing the change. And not only does it affect the church and the congregation, it has now affected music. It has affected music. We don't really even see strong church choirs anymore. Because we've reduced everything down to an ensemble. Yeah. We've reduced everything down. And so we have taken the very thing that has helped sustain and has given strength to the Black Baptist Church, and that is our choirs. I don't care if it was a senior choir number 1, 2, or 3. I sing in senior choir number 3. And they are committed to senior choir number 3. But for some reason, we've allowed this wave of praise and worship. I have nothing against it. And I'm not speaking because it didn't work where I am. I believe it will at some later point in time, but right now, it doesn't work. It doesn't fit for right now. And we come across this thing of, I want to praise team. Pastors, how many of you have praise teams? What's the purpose for your praise? Not saying bad or good, there's no right or wrong answer. Let me put that out there first. Why do we have a praise team?
We have praise team just lead the congregation in worship.
Okay. Could the choir not do that?
They could. Yeah. They can serve things for us.
Have you experienced any type of imbalance in that? Anything from choirs,
I don't think I've experienced much in the way of imbalance. I just think the current worship model for us, at least here, is that it's become a little more spectator as opposed to interactive. So
hand for a break. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we some years back, we were doing deacons, devotion, deaconesses kind of thing. And what I saw was my folks standing out the vestibule waiting for people to get done. And I looked at that and said, if they're going to just stand out the vestibule while the deacons and deaconesses are up there doing devotion, that serves me no good.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually went and said, okay, we're going to experiment. So we experimented with the deacon, the praise team, and what we saw was people responding much more so to our praise and worship. And so we started making that centrally our devotional piece. And so that was the reason why we shifted to that. But we didn't shift it centrally just for the purpose of other churches doing it.
Right.
We started looking at that as a
and so it's working for you.
Yes.
It's working for you.
What I ended up finding out was my young folks wanted to do the praise and worship. But I met with everyone and tried to teach and explain that if we had a spirit-filled devotional service, then they're the same. Because we think that devotional means I gotta line a hymn, but if deep lines it dead, it's gonna be dead. If your praise and worship team is dead, your praise and worship is gonna be dead. So I try to get them to understand that no matter which one we do, if you put your spirit and you're all into it, put some life into it, then it's basically the same thing as what you bring to the table, not so much what the folks standing up there bring.
And I could say some things, but I got too many recordings going on, and I don't want to say anything that will be held against me later. But you're exactly right, because if those that are, whether it's the deacons or the praise team, if there is no life and no substance of what they're doing, that's exactly what will happen. The people will sit there and watch, and you're correct, they will stand out in the lobby until that portion is over with.
Whether it's praise team or the deacon.
Either one of them. If it does not matter to them, if it's not relevant to them, if it's not making any difference to them, that's exactly what will happen.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add to that is, because praise and worship works fine here. The thing I would add is that just from a cultural standpoint, I think the times are just shifted in general. And I'm not making that explicit for everybody, but it's just shifted in a way that we're a lot more individuals than we are in the auditory. And with devotion, it was all auditory. And so you had to listen to the words that were being called out. And most of the time, now, the young people are not listening to the words that will be in line. So they didn't know what was saying one way or the other. Because I'll be honest. When I was a little boy, it took me a long time before I knew that they charged
What they were saying.
what they were saying. I thought he was saying, hey, Charles.
And let me see, in my years, this would be the safest way to do it. In my years of passing through, there have been some situations where the lining of the hymns killed the service. It had really, I understand the history, I understand, but there was a difference of our past deacons and deaconesses that really understood lining of hymns. There is a huge difference between the way we line hymns in D.C., Maryland, and the way they line hymns in Florida. Right. I was in a total, and I'm still in a culture shock. There's a difference. Now, we could line hymns in D.C., Maryland, and take the church all the way through because it had some pull and power to it. You understood it, you were able to connect. But when I came here, watch yourself prepare. You gotta live. I gotta live. Let me make it. All the way across the board, it's different. Musically, it's different. So you're exactly right. When you look at the culture, and while respecting the culture, but wanting to move it to being more relevant, and as long as we are teaching the people as we go along, because where my mistake was is just throwing the people up there and never had dialogue with the congregation. I mean, you know, pastor knew about it, but the congregation, because remember, they never had that before. And so now you just throw that up there, it's going to cause for people to step back and start questioning. So I would say for those of the pastors that are looking into it, and it's nothing wrong with it, but make sure that it fits within the culture and the culture dictates it, and they understand what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. Because we have a lot of praise and worship leaders that don't understand worship.
That's right.
And so, you know, we learned the latest new song, the different artists. I won't start calling out names in their songs, but we started learning these nice little cute songs, and we want folk to jump aboard with it when they don't understand. Because I still love it. I was really stroking my ego from my D.C., Maryland. That's what I was really doing. It felt so good, and the church was I did a march in, had the choir marching in, had the choir marching in, and the choir was all in session and ready, and of course, and I like this part about a minister of music. You should encourage your minister of music to be creative, which you knowing about it. Now, don't let them be creative. You don't know nothing about it. But being creative, because I never like being in a service and the people know what I'm going to do. I always like to keep them in expectancy as to, now what's going to happen today? Well, it had already heightened the expectation because when the congregation came in, there was nobody in the choir loft. So that had already started causing for what's going on. That bird is up to something again. So I had the choir coming in, and we had on the traditional black and white. Ladies had on the black dresses and the white pearls, men in their black suits, and all I had to do. Everybody. And because I didn't have the choir coming from the back of the church, I had them coming from the side door. Lord have mercy, when all 90 some of them people started walking, then they went up the side out, and then they came down the middle out and up to, and I mean, it just took the service to a whole nother level. And it was done on all old. And we feel like sometimes that we can't have a relevant church unless we got the latest music.
That's right. Yeah.
One of the greatest attributes of a minister of music is being able to sense a service. Because our job is to make you pastors, before you preach, not to have to plow the ground. That the people, I have a pastor in Baltimore that would always tell me, don't ever give me a cold service. I can't cook on no cold stove. Anytime you give it to me hot. And I've also had a pastor that said, don't ever give me a hot service. Let me make it. So I've had, but my job is to never give the pastor a cold service. And so you have to be sensitive. Now, there'll be outlines I have. But if that song ain't working, I've got to tune in real quick without showing any signs of struggling and come up with something else. And I'm going to tell you what works every time. Every time. If I'm sensing a service that's taking a dip, and for one thing I got to do. So never think that you got to have the newest and the latest and the greatest, because to be real honest, that doesn't always work. Even with our younger generation, and that's even surprising enough, that they enjoy those songs as well. Yes.
I think I hear what you're saying, but I want to ask you if that is because you assume something. And here's what I mean by that. I've brought and let go musicians who can't do that.
I'm going to that too.
Okay, well, I'll let you.
All right, and since you got me there, I'm going right. These musicians, because I've let them go too. Now, I'm going to give a report on myself, and I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I don't feel good about it. I'm just embarrassed. I've only been here 5 years. Why am I letting go 6 musicians? That ain't a good report for me. It works. Here's why. First of all, they're being compensated. My theory on this is God is our source, but He allowed the people to be our resource. My salary and their pays are coming from those people sitting in those pews. God is our source. He'll take care of us. But the truth of the matter is, if them pocketbooks close up, me, the pastor, the janitor, we're going to have to go look elsewhere. And so it behooves us to be able to accommodate everybody in that church. And that's where the work of a good minister of music comes in. And we're traditional Black Baptist. But don't be mistaken, because in our congregation, you got Pentecostal, you got Catholic, you got Episcopalians, you got every denomination there is, but they're sitting in your church, and it becomes our responsibility, not the pastor. It becomes our responsibility to make sure that we can be diverse in our music without killing it. And so when you talk about those musicians, can't play a standard hymn if you hummed it in their ears. But they want $500 a week. I've had them to walk in my office wanting $650 a week. Okay, no problem. Sure, no problem at all. I can handle that. What are we going to get for that $650 a week? glory to his name and holy, holy. Because pastors, please don't throw that away in your churches. Please. But if I put that before you, you need to be able to at least tell me what key it's in. You should be able to at least show me the soprano line, the alto line, the tenor line, and the baritone. And this generation of musicians can't do it to save their life and not interested. And that's where we come in, because they want a praise break.
Yeah.
They want a praise break. I don't want a praise break through a whole service.
That's right.
Now, I love a good hot service now. I love a good hot service. I'll dance in a minute. But I don't want that every Sunday.
But can I say this? As a pastor, I think part of the problem is we have helped to cultivate a generation of mercenaries. They don't come to do ministry, they come to gig, and they get paid to do a gig.
Gig. I'm glad you brought the word gig up.
And so, the mindset is so far removed from the ministry aspect that, as pastors, you on the one hand, you have to make a decision, do I do without until I find the right one, or do I try to make do with somebody who's not really what I want? And so it becomes a real struggle, in that respect. And, I've hired them and fired them, and I've had some gems and jewels, and then on the other hand, I've had some that were disasters. So it's a mixed bag.
But what do we do to demand, or I shouldn't use the word demand, that's too heavy. What should we do to increase the expectation? Because once again, remember, Pastor, you're paying them. I'm not going to pay you to tell me.
All right.
That's why, I don't do rehearsals, and I ain't never heard that. I got to Florida, where musicians don't go to rehearsal. When I took my assignment, they had my assignment, went to rehearsal, went no musicians there. And of course, I went on through the rehearsal and kind of just started asking questions because they didn't want to upset nothing. I'm learning the culture. Maybe that's what they do. I don't know. But it's just, we just don't come to rehearsal. But how do you prepare? Oh, they just send us the music. Oh, no. So then that's when you got to start changing the culture. Because once again, if they're not, you've got. And I know we want to be careful how we handle people, and we don't want to run people off because we need. But Pastor, let me tell you something. You'll be surprised of the musicians that are just really just floating around right now. And some of them have gone through the fire, and some of them learned their lessons. Whether they learned it with me or they learned it with somebody else. That are looking, and I'm not trying to candidate for nobody, for you all dismiss nobody, but if it ain't working, it ain't working. Especially, and I'm still on this thing, we're paying people, and they're not up to it because, the expectation. I'm gonna come and get you. Let me get it. You had your hand.
I just wanted to say exactly what Pastor Miller said. He's their family in some instances, but as a pastor on Sunday morning, when you're looking at a musician and you're trying to change even a song, and he or she have no idea when you say, we're going to sing Blessed Assurance, and they sit there and wait for you to start.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but our reality is, that we don't have always at our discretion and disposal musicians that are going to come in and do what you just did. That's just a fact. And even the ones that you do finally find to come in, it's not even just the money. It's just the whole aspect of ministry. I mean, I don't want to sound redundant, but
it's
the
true.
whole aspect of ministry is something you're entrusting to them to some degree. But at the same time, they're not willing to take on the responsibility, let alone the level of commitment.
Pastor, there's go ahead, because I won't forget.
Yes, I'm like you. I've been across the place in this country, and I kind of sense what you're saying, and I can concur with Pastor here. Where I find that the minister of music in this area is shortness of is two areas. When it comes to the music, they have two areas, by ear and by note. Okay, they can't do one, they can do the other. Now, the biggest part of it is they fail to realize that you got a lot of pastors that know how to play. They can get behind the key, but they're not going to do both, play and preach. So I said all that to say this, that when you find that it's a business, but it's a ministry also, that's the person that somebody need to key in on, respecting their job as well as ministry in the same token.
Here's where we have to begin to turn and change the cultures, because I hear and understand exactly where you're coming from. But here's where the accountability and the responsibility kind of come back. At what time do we bring these musicians in and we have the conversation? There is a young minister of music that is just starting and learning and grooming how to become a minister of music. And his pastor has sort of required that he shadows me, both musically and administratively, in order to maintain this position. Because if we and you as pastors are going to continue your education and grow and develop and so forth, why aren't we expecting our music persons to do the same? That is a part of their job description, that they must continue their studies in church music, both choral and gospel. When I say choral, hymns, at least learning the basic of hymns. That has to be a requirement if you pay them. And I know, because they tried that with me, and that's why. Let me jump here. When you are looking for a minister of music or director of music, now technically, a minister of music doesn't need to know how to play, but you get a greater value if that minister of music can play. So when you're looking, they don't necessarily, but if they can't play, they need to have some strong leadership and administrative skills to be able to rally people around them. But if not, they need to be able to play. That helps out a whole lot. So, pastors, when do we bring them to the table? Have we done that? And what has been the same thing?
No, I mean, I think in general, the results have been okay. The problem is generationally, there's a different mindset attached to young musicians. And so, from a cultural, from an orientation standpoint, it's a process to just try to get them to grasp, and so to speak, let me see if this makes sense. I have no problem with the minister of music or whoever having a vision for the music ministry. They ought to have a vision for the music ministry. But your number one vision should be to uphold the vision of the church, and the direction of the church. And so when it becomes a tug of war in terms of direction and flow of worship, that's when it starts becoming, I start sensing, a problem in terms of just trying to make sure we're all on the same page.
That big C-word communication is very important because once again, we allow the musicians to kind of just be at will, whatever it is they want to do, as long as they show up for rehearsal and on Sunday. They have to be a part of the total program. They have to be part, because if not, that's what we're going to get. We're just going to get this hitting and missing. And I know they'll make those little soft threats. Well, you know, I can go over here and I can do that. But never let a musician hold you hostage. Never let them hold their... I've had them to try me since I've been here. I'm surprised because I'm thinking that, you know, this is church, this is ministry, this is about God's business. But there are those that really feel as though if it ain't my way, then I just won't do this. And that's fine. So I've had to release quite a few to their destiny. And God always, now listen, I don't know nobody here. I don't really know musicians here. But every time, when I've had to do it, did it right, did it out of the pure heart, not out of malicious or getting back into it, God has always sent somebody else. Don't know where they come from, don't know who they are. But as soon as I've had to let somebody go, and that's one of the hardest part of my job, is having to let people go. But at the same token, if the expectation is there, and you've been given everything you need to help you reach that, but you refuse to, I can't keep taking the church's money and paying you. Because they're expecting a product out of me. Had a deacon when I first got there, because I'm the first full-time minister of music they've had. They've always had piano players and choir directors. And I was setting up a little office and just moved in, setting up a little office, and a deacon walked by, and he stuck a little bit. He could say, what you gonna be doing all day, every day? And so as I was beginning to explain to him what it is, he's like, that's all right. Come Sunday morning, I'll be able to tell what you done done. And I've held hold to that, I mean firm. And that is exactly right. It's all right, you don't need to tell me what you do every day. But come Sunday morning, I'll be able to tell what you've been doing all week. And he sits right there on that front row, right in the corner. He's 93. Sits right there in the corner. And there are several things that better happen in that service. Because it's also my responsibility to outline the service and to choreograph the service. Whether it's mime or dance, everything better be on point. From the anything that has to do, he sits right, and my stock really goes up when I give him some good old songs. Stock really goes up there. But that is our responsibility. So you have to make the hard decisions. We have to make the hard decision. Because if not, they will keep taking us through the ringer like that.
Should it be the expectations that you're talking about? My members, I sat down with my members a couple of weeks ago and I told them, so you guys got to realize, every Sunday, I don't get up and give you a warmed over, nor do I give you a Saturday night special. I pursue my further education. I pursue other avenues. I look for things to study, how to bring a better word to you all. My minister of music, I should expect him to bring the exact same thing to my people. And as I was sharing with my brother, one thing that, Antioch is, I pastor a young church, but what I'm looking at is not only homegrown, but those who are in school for music. I'm expecting for you to come back home and bring back what you have gleaned. And I think in a lot of our churches, since we're talking about trying to break the cycle, a lot of us, we might need to start looking at homegrown. because instead of hiring the guy who's looking for the next gig, or hiring somebody who's on a rotational basis, if they're homegrown, I think I asked this question to you last year, you get a whole lot, to me, it seems like you get a whole lot out of a person more when they not only buy into your message, your ministry, but they buy into what the church is actually trying to do, than just a musician that we pay that comes here to play. He's not a member. He hasn't bought into the vision, the mission, the statement of the church. We just pay him to play. And I think when you do it that way, you get what you're paying for.
But that's 90. And I know I'm really stretching this, but that's about 90% of our churches. The luxury of being able to afford a quality minister of music is of such a premium to them that if you are a church of mid-range, you have about 100 to 200 members. Trying to have a full-time pastor, if that's the church's decision, and then a full-time minister of music, plus another musician, plus staff, comes at a premium.
Sure. And when we talk about our smaller churches and smaller budgets, there are some challenges there, but they are doable. Once again, and I'm real big on this word culture. There's a book that I got that I downloaded on my iPad. It's called Breaking the Church's Culture, and just talking about the different shifts and the trends. I believe the atmosphere that we set in our churches, whether it be pastor or music leader, it's all about the atmosphere and the environment that we set. You're right. When coming from where I came from into this situation, I realized that they're not even ministers of music. I was very shocked at that. They're still called piano players. Because I remember, and I learned that when I first got here, I had sent out about 50-something letters inviting, and I had sent it all, to the church that the secretary had given me, sent them out because I wanted to meet the music directors and and nobody responded. But one person, and he wasn't even full time. And it really did bother me because, I'm invited to a free lunch to meet you, and ain't nobody being nice. And come to find out, no, it's not that they're not being nice, it's that that's not heard of here. We still got a first Sunday piano player, a second Sunday piano player, and a third Sunday piano player. And I'm trying to figure out, and this has literally been a personal project of mine, in learning that how am I'm talking about myself, because it's real easy for me to sit up in my office and be content and comfortable and say, well, them poor little peoples.
Just worry about the old deacon.
Them old, But I am really concerned for such as our churches that have the challenges of the musician and challenges of the choir. When the choir is singing on key and they can't even sing in three-part harmony, and we just that bothers me, because, and I have to be very careful. I've been blessed to be under great mentors and go to school and so forth. I've been blessed. But I just don't want to take this blessing and sit on my little hill and look down at everybody else and say, poor people, because see, choirs that singing on key and musicians going one way in the choir, that stuff is not funny. And people will sit up there and laugh. Yes. That is not funny. I found a musician for laughing. Just laughing at, they just laughing at him. What's wrong? Do you hear that? That was it. We don't do that. Because that's a reflection not on just them, that's a reflection on you. So my personal project has been, how am I able to help the pastors that are experiencing these situations with their musicians. But pastors, I also got to go back and say, you got to put the soft demand there. You've got to be able to bring persons in. Because a lot of times, but sometimes I have to do it right there inside. Bring somebody else in that will say the same thing you done said. But for some reason, they got a revelation. What? And, and you grit your teeth because it's just like, you better not act like you finna get mad. Woo, fresh word from the Lord. And you better not act like it. And I've been saying this for 5 years, because sometimes it takes for another face to come in and to reiterate, exactly what it is that you're saying. So when we talk about the music, so I'm going to go there since that's where we are. When we talk about those musicians, you're talking about homegrown. And homegrown sometimes does work. And then sometimes homegrown doesn't work. Because sometimes they feel like because, I've been a member of this church, I grew up in this church, that, it go my way. And especially if you're a new kid on the block, and a new kid as a pastor. My mom and grandma. And so you got to deal with all that kind of culture and going on. When I'm talking with choir directors and musicians and those that are leading the choir, you got to come up with some creative leadership to inspire the people, to keep the people engaged. Because if not, we're just going to get what we're going to get. So when we talk about those musicians, you got to require them to go to conferences. To Bethlehem, and listen, let me talk about these conventions. Talk about these conventions. Our conventions, and when I say our conventions, gospel music workshop, the National Convention of Gospel Choirs, of course. Now, we've got some more other gospel conventions going. Be careful where you're sending them for training. Right. Because a lot of these conventions that I am realizing are a lot of self-promotion. Getting your project out, doing your thing. But we're not finding, and this is where I'm challenging these conventions, even the one that I'm a part of, which is the Dorsey Convention, to make sure that we are training and developing the music leaders for the local church, not for your personal recording project. How to get your thing out there. And they spend our money, we send them, but they don't come back with nothing. They don't come back with nothing. They don't come back with anything. I remember my pastor in D.C. would send me to Hampton, would send me anywhere I come back, but I gotta come back. Document it. Everything that has happened, and then I don't want to only just see it on paper. I want to see some demonstration. I know we're in a different area, different place, but we've got to start raising that level to where musicians, and it's not always about beating them over the head about being paid. That's not, because they can go anywhere and get paid. But the fact of the matter is they're with us. They're receiving from us. So we should be making the soft demands of their trainings and their developments. Now, here's another one I'm going to hit you with. Make sure your musicians are a part of the church. When I say a part of the church, financially. Giving something.
That's right.
Because this is before our music staff as well. We need you to be a part. And I know I've had this conversation with musicians already, because they've been somewhere where the church or the pastor has, required them, demand them to tithe or whatever, there. So there's a lot of mixed feelings. I don't have anything to do with your tithing and all that, but you do need to be a part of the finance of the church in giving something, so that you're not always taken away from, but you're actually putting back into. Because you're going to want instruments. You're going to want this. You're going to want that. And the first thing that happens is that they look. And it's okay, Pastor Stewart. Because, once again, everybody needs to be a part of the financial growth of the church, including the musicians, the people that we pay. We're not telling them how much they got to pay, but do something. Because that's time, that's the blessings tied. That's how we're tied. All right? Now, I want to go back, because I want to have some kind of consensus when we leave today about our music staff. Now, I have some pastors that are sitting nicely by, and you haven't said anything, and I know you got some things going on. But how can I help you get to the next level? How can I help you get to the next level? Anybody?
Well, I think through the teaching and the training, I mean, it's good to have pastors in this session, but, you know, I'm sitting here thinking, man, my musician needs to be sitting right here by me to hear what you're teaching. He's younger, and of course, you know, that culture that you're talking about. Whereas, but this young man, you know, he's familiar with the old school and he's able to do it, but I don't think he understands when to do it, how to do it. You know, so there are some details that he really needs to understand. Like one of the pastors just said, I've gone through a multitude of musicians, but you get to the point where you get tired of going through musicians, and you really need to, and your people get tired of it.
Yeah.
Your people get tired of it, your choir gets tired of it, and with every musician, you start to lose choir members. You know.
That's exactly
So
right.
at some point you say, well, okay, if I keep on finding musicians, pretty soon it's going to be, you know, a solo act up here. I'll be leading hymns and songs by myself.
Yeah, yeah.
So you know, you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I get to that point where our music ministry is compatible, where our music ministry is relevant to what our church needs. And I think one of the most important things is our musicians, as well as our music ministry as a whole, being taught. I think you came to Mount Sinai and did a workshop there. And the information that you're giving right now is just priceless. You know, it's priceless. But we as pastors and leaders, you know, we really need to have our musicians and music leaders, ministers of music. They need to be exposed to what you're giving right now.
And Pastor, be real careful, because sometimes we feel like we've got to go get a well-named person.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you the downside of that. Sometimes they turn into a pimp rally, get you all hyped, get you all, and you do good for that moment. That artist gone. They got their check, they got their honorary, they're gone.
That's right.
You can't call, and so we've got to start being intentional about reaching out to our fellow churches that are making some type of progress, and start doing some collaboration. It's okay to have artists, but when we're talking about really trying to develop and to grow something, that's when we go back to the homegrown again.
Yeah. I think that just like you said, you sitting down with us as far as letting us know what our expectations should be. But I think the greater buy-in, as Dr. Scott was saying, to be honest with you, this would be even better to me in a Congress setting where we actually offer the classes to the musicians, the ministers of music. The information you've given us as far as accountability, communication, we need. but everything else to better us would be for you to sit down with the actual people. Because I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, if your heart is in it, you know, and again, I have the musical talent of being able to go like that. But if you're halfway, if you anything with the music, and to sit here and listen to you, and for any minister of music and musician of anybody's church not to want to sit and glean, then I wouldn't want that person in my church. When I said homegrown, you know, I'm talking about, you know, I have a daughter who's a junior in college, and whenever I go down to her school and I meet with the dean of music and I meet with her professors, and they're telling me what she's learning, the structure, how to be able to match the music with my sermon, the importance of hymns. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I didn't want to interrupt you, but God bless you. Because to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not old, but being a history major, I get tired of hearing people talking about, you know, we don't need the line of hymns, we don't need the hymn book anymore. Because to be honest with you, that's us. And if we lose who we are, you know, we lose who we are, we can forget it. And to be perfectly honest with you, as I said, I wrestle with my older members and my younger members all the time with the fact that if you sing it and you feel it, it's not a dead song anymore.
Right.
You know,
It's always on a presentation.
Big Mama sang Amazing Grace and tear the house down.
Yeah.
Y'all singing it, it's like you just saying words.
Yeah.
I go back to what you expressed earlier about culture. And for me, growing up, I'm not talking about from a pastoral set of eyes, I'm talking about culturally. You knew the difference of when you're having church and when you're not having church. I'm not a musician by background.
No, you got me back.
I don't know a meter from a leader. So it put me at a distance about how do you help us? Because I know what I want and I know what it needs to sound like on Sunday morning. I know what it needs to sound like at rehearsal. But how do I answer that question? I don't know. I don't know what it takes to teach the voices, to teach the music, and the compilation of all of it coming together. So when you see the final product, you're saying amen. I don't know what that is. I know what it's not. But what actually makes that click with the drummers, whatever you have in your church, actually everybody's on point, where your congregation, pastor, and everybody, even the ushers are dancing at the door. That's very different than when you see people snickering in the service. So I don't know how to answer that question. And I agree with what's been stated already, that it'd be nice to have the musicians here, because I don't have the time to try and run behind someone every time something goes wrong, because I'm in reaction mode. And I can't teach you any more than than me saying to you, that wasn't a good service. Because after I say that, I'm looking to you now to make the adjustments, and you can't make it because I can't teach you. You know, it's very different for me to take out the Word of God and go through, you know, models of ministry, or, you know, exposition on whatever, or, you know, exegeting a text for someone, or even showing them hermeneutical study. I mean, I can do that all day.
Yeah.
But when you start about leaders, and I mean, brother, I'm going to tell you, that's not my strength.
You say you're mentoring the one brother. Is there any other, you know, because to be honest with you, I look at, again, my daughter goes to Florida Memorial, and all of those people in those music classes are in somebody's church on Sunday. In Orlando, you know, I can't go to UCF and try to find some some of us to come play for me.
Exactly.
You know, is there any
I'll tell you that.
is there any place besides coming to St. Pete and following you that these people
It ain't
needed
nothing.
training.
It ain't nothing.
I'm gonna circle back around to all of that.
One of the things I would like to suggest is that part of the, I think that in addition to the musicians and the pastors getting together, I think they ought to bring the deacons in, because the deacons are basically hearing, we're not going to line hymns. And there's not any really explanations. They're not, you know, they're not being told that, okay, the way you sing that is not necessarily uplifting enough. Okay, it's just that, oh, no, we're not going to have, we're not going to line hymns anymore. So now you've almost got, instead of having somebody for you, you got somebody that's not necessarily, you know, in your corner.
And I would say this, the black church, the Black Baptist Church is a unique organization. We're about the only ones that multiply by divide. We keep growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, pastors are resigning, pastors are committing suicide, pastors' churches are going in foreclosure, but us, somehow, we just keep on multiplying. So that lets me know that, no, God doesn't have any respect of persons. He loves us all, but it's something about us that he still continues to bless us in spite and in the midst of everything. And I think once we understand as leaders, music leaders, pastors, that we are a unique group of people that God has truly, ultimately blessed. And it has been the music and the preaching of the word that has carried us from one century to the other. And so we cannot lose the lining of hymns. We cannot lose the hymns. We cannot lose spiritual. We cannot lose. We cannot lose. We cannot stop. Because the more we throwing it out, Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir is catching our stuff and recording it. Our music. While we throwing it out, because that's old, we don't, they're taking our music. And I know I'm right about it, because every time I turn around, they got a recording with all our black music on it. While we getting rid of it. They ain't singing their own stuff. They singing ours. There are white pastors that I know right now will not hire a white minister of music. And this is what they say. There is something different about your culture. You all got a lot of fire. Y'all know how to really. So they hire us. They come looking for us. When we start learning the power that we have in our churches and in our culture, I believe we'll start seeing that shift change. Now, I asked the question, how could I help? And I'm very serious about helping. Because I can come in here and talk all day long and talk from all the points. But the fact of the matter, you got to get up from here and go back to your situation. And one point was made among many that is so true. I love talking to y'all. I really do. Y'all are not the ones. Amen. I need to be talking to. Amen. Amen. I need your choir president. I need your musician. I need your music leader. I need your music directors. And I need them in a room where I can talk their language. See, they can come in and snowball you on anything. That's right. They know the right. They get together and rehearse what they're gonna say. They know the church language. They know the church lingo. And they'll throw it out there all day long. And when you hire them, then you find out you got something else. I need. And I tell you, and the musicians that I am, and you know, I ain't too highly liked. Cause right is right and wrong is wrong. When you dealing with the church, you don't handle the church like that. We got some rotten people like that. That's mishappening in the church. That's wrong. But anyway, I know the language. I need that conversation with them, and it's not to beat them up, even as I get older, when I was coming along, the mentors were there. They were there. But they done started phasing out, dying off.
Yeah.
And some of them just don't even want to be bothered no more. Some in my age bracket, they got out of church altogether. They don't fool with no choirs. They don't fool with nothing because they say this generation is lazy. And that is true. But somebody got to stay in this game.
I think Dr. Parrott,
Somebody's got to stay in here. And you know, and I'm okay. I'm okay. But I've been told, child, you ain't going to keep me up to 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning no more. Keep talking about the same thing over and over. We done talk now until you gonna keep talking to 12 o'clock in the morning. Man, I'm going to need you to get this at some point in time. Because I realize all of our mentors in the music ministry are nothing. Everybody, you know, everybody's out for that money. You know, if you can't, you know, give it to me. You know.
I think since you're in St. Pete and we are coming to town in July, I think we ought to just go ahead and say, hey, this is what we need to do.
Yeah,
Pastors.
because really, if you don't get your musicians and your music leaders, if you don't get them in the environment, you're gonna be frustrated. You gotta get them in the environment. Now, let me say this, and Pastor, this is yes, sir.
I'm going to, I think that Brother Duckworth has made a statement, and he kind of glossed over it for our Congress type of information.
I think it goes back to what you were
and I think that we need to wrestle. That's what we need to wrestle with is a way we can get that done to bring them, because I think this information, everything you're saying is so true. Every church in here is primarily dealing with music and musicians and problems. But I think that we should just come up with some type of tactic, if you will, that can get individuals. I think the answer is a curriculum, but if we have it and 2 people show up, yeah.
But it's like I said, Dr. Spooning, it's what we expect. If I'm paying my musician, this is what I expect. I expect for you to be there at this session.
yeah.
Again, whether it's part-time, full-time. If I'm paying you, again, I can give you an extra $30 to put in your gas tank to drive to town. But if I'm paying you,
here's the thing, you know, we have a north region and we have a south region. And what we've been doing, because we understand the logistics and the travel circumstances.
That's where I'm going with it.
Is that where you're going? What other did you say?
Don't we have a region that we meet ever so often? Why can't we just split it up into regions?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Well, here's where I'm at. I've been I'm glad y'all keep talking, because this allows me to keep making sure this is what I want to say. Y'all keep talking with more questions, right? In this room, Dr. Evans, what is the, I guess
We're on the furthest end on the south region now.
okay, so Sarasota's okay, and then back up our way and beyond, the furthest is Sanford. With Sanford or Lebanon.
North region. From south region, Sarasota, to the north region would be Sanford. The 2 S's, Sarasota and Sanford.
Gotcha. Those pastors that are interested, because you do have to consider, you know, if they're working and, you know, taking off jobs and things like that. Now we're getting into a whole nother, now if they're full-time there at the church every day or whatever, then yeah, you need it. But when they're working, that does become a challenge. For those pastors that are interested, I will come to you. Because if this Sarasota is the furthest here in Sanford, that's not too bad of travel for me. I will come to you an issue and not charge you. And I tell you why, because I'm just that interested. You know, my colleagues call me a bit of a fool. But I go back because somebody gave to me and sowed into my life. And took time with me, okay? And that has been my challenge to all my colleagues, to be able to give back, because the church keeps growing, but the supply and demand keeps getting smaller. And if we are not, you know, because like I said, I can sit here and talk to us all day long. But the ones that really going to benefit from it are not here to benefit from it. And you trying to tell them, that's German to them. What? So, those pastors that are interested, I will come to you, the initial, for free. Set it up as long as my calendar can meet so forth. We can sit there and beat them all day long, say you can't, but then who's showing them? Who's working with them? So they're going to give you, you know, pretty much what they got. So I offer that to you, and I haven't fallen back off this stool, so I must be all right. Because I am really interested in our churches. And as we are having these Congress and these sessions, we've got to figure out some kind of way of getting our music. Because, like I said, I was challenging these various music conventions. The classes that they have are good, but nothing is dealing with leadership in the local church. Everything is about themselves, growing themselves, getting their projects out. But what about the local church? And this is not out there. So that's where I am. Are there any other questions, comments? Because I think I've answered my own question. And pastors, take advantage of it. Take advantage of it. Yes.
Looking at culture, there used to be churches that would have a different Sunday type music. You'd have men one Sunday, everybody one Sunday, young people one Sunday. But now it seems like the trend is going towards, let's make it everybody every Sunday. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm in one of those situations where now there's the main choir, there's a men's choir, there is a children's choir, and there is a youth and young adult choir. But that main choir sings both services every Sunday.
Well, what I'm saying, that choir sings the whole service that Sunday, whichever one it is.
And here again, that comes about the culture and developing, having the conversation. Now, of course, you know, my early service, you know, the numbers are not as great. But the second service, you know, they're spilling out all everywhere. And that comes from because the pastor has a requirement to not have empty choir logs. Because, you know, with the men choir, sometimes I can go from 15 to 20, and, you know, the numbers are not as great than it is with the sanctuary choir. And that's still some work too. Because once again, getting those people engaged every week, they get a, you know, so often they get time, you know, on Sunday off where we'll put one of the other choirs, you know, there. But they got to be able to pull that service, because you don't want to, you know, people start saying, well, I only go there on the first Sunday, or I only go there on the second Sunday, because that's when it's hype. No, every Sunday. And that's what I thrive for every week. It doesn't matter who's singing, but that quality still stays there. Doesn't matter if it's the children, if it's the men, youth and young adults, but that quality of that service stays right there. How many of who plans your Sunday worship service? Is that who plans that? Who plans that service, that outline, or you just have a general outline? Who plans that service? Pastor plans that service? Pastor plan. Where is the musician in on that plan?
When he shows up to see the Lord.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, you know, I said earlier that, you know, the musicians need to be here, not to exclude the pastors, because I think that in order to have a good quality service, I think both pastor and musician and minister of music need to kind of be teamwork together. On the same page with the development of that worship service. You know?
I know for me, it is very difficult for me not to have communication with the pastor. I don't need to be in his office every day. I don't need to be going out golfing, but I do require conversations about that worship experience. That is something I've got to have. Because once again, if those two are not connected, you'll sometimes find competition between the pulpit and the choir.
Right.
And people are not stupid. They know when there's something going on. And then besides, you know, that musician or that music leader knowing you and your spirit and knowing when enough is enough. Because, you know, we as choir director music, we go on and on and on and on. But to be able to have that sensing to know without the pastor making eyes that you were saying anything, but that only comes with that communication. And whenever it gets to the point that I can't have communications anymore, then we need to look at something else. Because see, what starts to happen is that things will start creeping up, and we're like, okay, but you should have known. But we can never assume. We've got to have that. And whether they're part-time, you know, even if just pick up their phone during the week, hey, Billy, just want, you know, are we good for service on Sunday? Are you clear on everything? What are the songs you're doing? It's okay to ask what they're doing. You might want to know that.
You should.
Yeah, how's it coming? And then even after the service, having those debriefings. How did this service go? What do we want to change in this service? What do we want to do in this service? Because like I said, one of my greatest things is always keeping the congregation in anticipation. Because when they know my pattern and know what I'm going to do, it's not good. So always keep them at that moment of expectation.
Do you still believe that there is certain songs for certain points of the worship service?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I just don't see doing a praise and worship song during the invitation.
Exactly. And here again, that comes with those training and those developments, because they go other places and they see other things and they think that that's the law and the way it should be done. I never pre-planned the invitation selection. I'm listening to the sermon. Want to make sure that whatever I come up with complements what was just spoken, because that reinforces the word. And a lot of people don't. I'm literally sitting in the sermon. I hear the sermon, but I can't get caught up in the amen, tell it, preacher, go ahead, do it one more time. I can't get caught up into that because I don't want to lose that main point of the song. This past Sunday was a prime example of one of the musicians, and his evaluation next week that will come up. The preacher had spoken. The preacher had, yes, I evaluated me. The preacher preached. And as Rev. Thomas was getting to his end and was making the invitation, he called the song out, Give Myself Away. That was the point. The musician started playing something else. And I sat there, and and I'm not good. I haven't mastered fixing my face yet. Sister Stephanie is, she's been in the choir, and I'll introduce her later. But they always have to remind me, because I'm not good with my face. You can tell when it ain't hit right with me. I start throwing. I'm working on me. I'm working on me. But But he started playing something else, and he gave a direct song right there. Today ought to be the day you just give yourself away. And this musician started playing, Just Want to Thank You Forever. Oh, he knew that song many times. We done that song around. Give myself. It was no problem to turn right there. The driveway was overturned right there. You were playing something else. I started to deduct $25 for that. But he missed that, and I sat there and I was like, oh, he missed the turn. So yeah, it is very important that they be in tuned into that service. Well, how about we even got to get them to stay in the service when they get through? How about that?
I almost shouted, man, you almost.
How about we get them to stay in the service? That's what I'm talking about. Where y'all going? I give you a bottle of water right there. Where you going?
Smoke break.
But yeah, so these are things that they really, because when you honestly, who do they have? Who do they have? They don't have anybody. Y'all got y'all Ralph West. Y'all got y'all, you ain't got Dr. King, Kevin Mack, King Carter no more. He going on, y'all. But y'all got y'all great pioneers. Y'all got them right there. Who do we have?
They really don't. Especially the younger generation.
Yeah, but who do we have? Because Vashawn Mitchell and Kirk, them ain't coming to spend no time with us without a little fee. You ain't going to be able to call them and say, how do I handle this situation? And they're right there for it. That's not going to happen.
Feed your dad and say, hey, come and fix your wife.
But they had to be fixed itself first.
Oh, shout out.
Again. Yeah, and because they pass it, I don't know if y'all noticing this, but artists now are out looking for church positions.
That's the new thing.
Ernest Pugh. And I'm calling out names, y'all just recording me, don't. Ty Trickett. Smoking before he decided to go ahead and pastor. They're doing one or two things. They're either starting their own churches, or they're going to be ministers of music at other churches. But let me tell you the problem with that. A mainline artist, because people think if I can just get me up, they're always on the road. They still ain't developing. They ain't developing home. They still on the road. They see you on Sunday, somebody else rehearsing the choir.
That's right.
And you paying them 90 for their name. And thinking that's going to draw. But your internal structure is still off. It's still going. So we like Homegrown, you might want to, right there. Because it looks pretty on paper and on the website. But yeah. All right. Listen, I want to share two things with you. And once again, for those pastors that are interested, please make sure that we make connections, and we'll make that happen. I'm the president of the West Central Florida chapter of the National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Chorus. That is the Dorsey Convention, the oldest convention, gospel music convention there is. I know we have James Cleveland and all others, but they came after the fact. Dr. Dorsey is the father of it all, so I'm very proud. Yes, to be president of the West Central Florida chapter, the only active chapter in Florida. I'm glad it's being recorded. So we're having, and we've been blessed to do this because we've only been in this convention now 2 years. But West Central Florida chapter has made such an impact on the convention that they have decided to bring the regional convention, the Southeast Region Convention, to St. Petersburg in January. So I'm very proud of that, and that's another one of the ways to get your persons involved. So please make sure. And let me go ahead and also give. I've also been blessed to be nominated for quite a few things, and so we can go ahead and that's both of them out. If you will, please do the voting again for the Rhythm of Gospel Awards. The nomination goes all the way up to March the 1st, but the convention is what I really want to pay close attention to. That will happen on January the 22nd through the 24th, and it's really actually the 23rd. It is the leaders meeting on that Thursday, but Friday there are sessions, and then on Saturday there are sessions as well on January the 23rd and the 24th. I have, and I won't go through them, but I have just books and things, because a leader that won't read is a leader that can't lead. I even put this challenge to our music directors, choir directors: you gotta read. You've gotta read. You've gotta study your word. You gotta know what you're doing and why you're doing it. But other than that, a lot of my books in my office are, I love Harvard Business Review, to see what's going on out there. Not to try to adopt it in the church, but there are a lot of good little practice and principles that they have that does work even in our church service. So I have, things, how to create a culture of excellence, and kind of preaching God's blessings. And even though they're not preachers or pastors, they need to be able to connect with you in the Word. And I know that's so far stretched, and it's surprising to me, because I know among the white sector, whether they're large or small, their persons are required to do continuing education to maintain their positions. And I've had the experience of serving under 2 white pastors in my 42 years. And I'll tell you, that is a huge difference. The expectations and the requirements there, and the expectations and the requirements, they are so different. In the white folks' churches, although the pastor was white, the congregation was predominantly black, but it was still that expectation. And there was no deviation from it, that expectation. But sometimes we get over in our culture, and we still got that whosoever will let them. And if we're going to strengthen our churches, if we're going to strengthen our ministries, we've got to create a culture and environment of expectation. And it's not so much what you say, but how you say it. And I know we've got a generation that they ain't listening. But I believe if we find that creative approach, I believe we can turn all of this around. Excellence. What is excellence to you? Because what may be excellence to me may not be excellence to you. But everything ought to be done in decency and in order. Amen. From our choir rehearsals to our Sunday morning presentation, everything. We ain't got to have chaos all the time. We ain't got to have, that's one thing that I do not have is chaos. Now, it'll be some folk trying, and I'll shut it down in a minute, because ain't nobody got time for that. This is not the place for it, because we have to even create within our rehearsal an environment of worship. People come in and worked all day long. Some people, like Sister Steph, she lives on this side, and drive all the way over there. I'll make sure I start right there at 7 o'clock, and I'm done at 8:15. I ain't standing there all day on one song. You ought to be able to accomplish at least 2 to 3 new songs in 1 hour and a half rehearsal session. Going in there, staying all day and plucking on that one note all night, no. And that comes from a leader and a director keeping the people's attention and moving. Sometimes I have to go back like I'm in the classroom. Move when you come off one thing, move into the next thing. Because if not, you start engaging in other things. But if you keep them moving and working, you'll be surprised what you can get accomplished in that one moment time. Amen. Any questions for me?